Welcome. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar, hosted by the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. My name is Victor Trinidad with the NCPMI. This webinar is part of the Digging into Data webinar series. Today's topic is Addressing Challenging Behavior Through Data, Implementing the BIRS in an Online Childhood Program. Presented by Myrna Vagia and Denise Perez-Binder. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Denise Binder with the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovation. I'm here with Myrna Vagia, our data entry guru. We are continuing our series on digging into data. Hopefully you were able to call in for our first session. This is our second session, and we're going to be digging a little bit deeper into the Behavior Incident Report System, or BIRS. As Victor stated, we have Q&A or chat boxes at the bottom that you can use at any point. If you have questions, we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can throughout the presentation, but we'll be able to address, hopefully, most of your comments or questions. So don't forget to write in your answers at the end. So we wanted to start, and we'll probably start all of our digging into data series with the reminder that pyramid model is really focused on promotion of social emotional skills and prevention of challenging behaviors. So all of the data tools that we explore together, that's their main focus. We really want to have that focus always in the front of our mind. What can we do to set up environments so that we promote social emotional learning for all our young learners? And what can we do to prevent challenging behavior for all our young learners? So even though BIR is focused on the tier 3 or those intensive interventions, we're really thinking about all layers, all levels of the pyramid as we talk through all our data tools. And a little bit, we'll explain how the sequence of data roles for pyramid model and where BIR fits in that sequence. And so hopefully that'll help kind of clarify the purpose of BIR, why we think BIR is really important to the strength and to the durability of your program-wide pyramid model implementation. So I'm gonna turn it over to Myrna. She's gonna give us a little bit of an intro of BIR before we start digging deeper.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as Denise had mentioned previously, this is the second webinar as part of that Digging into Data webinar series. In the first webinar, we talked, we kind of went through the spreadsheet and we went through all of what the spreadsheet can do for you. But I want to give you a really brief introduction to what the BIR is. So the BIR is a system for collecting and analyzing behavior incidents in early childhood settings. And it's really powerful in that it provides you with a lot of data in order to help you and the leadership team, if you're part of that, as a teacher, as a program, really make data-driven decisions. With that in mind of prevention and promotion of these social emotional skills. So the system will give you data to show you if there are any concerns related to discipline. It'll give you summaries for challenging behavior across classrooms, for individual classrooms, for individual children. And be able to help you see where behavior incidents are occurring and how teachers are responding to those incidences in order to inform program practices. And it also gives you great summaries on how to identify children and teachers who need that extra support. So as far as the analytic elements, because we're talking about a data system, what kind of analysis does that provide you? And so what we look at is behavior incident frequency. That's what we're measuring. So we're measuring that, again, at the program level, how many incidents are occurring across all of our classrooms, within our classrooms, and individual children. You're looking at different factors. So you're looking at the types of problem behavior, the activities of where problem behavior is being reported, who is involved, what is that possible motivation, and how is that teacher responding? And is there any type of administrative follow-up? So within all of these factors here, these variables as we call them, you can look at that at the program level, the classroom level, and the child level. And in a few minutes, I'll show you what those graphs might look like. You also are able to look at disproportionality. So you're looking at different metrics. The ones that we focus on are BIR composition, risk ratio, and we're looking at disproportionality by race, ethnicity, by gender, by IEP status, and dual language learner status. So we're looking at all of this within one system. So that this one system has that power to look at all of these metrics. So the BIR form, if you haven't seen it before, this is what it looks like. The fields, they match behaviors and activities that occur in early childhood settings. So you have things such as, tantrums and diapering and, other things that you wouldn't see on something that's not specific for early childhood. What you also see is a ribbon down at the bottom where it has that information in order for us to look at the data for those, with those demographic variables in mind. So you're collecting this information on incidents as they occur in the classroom. The other thing that the BIR can do is it can track administrative actions or teacher responses that result in in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and dismissals. So apart from giving you all of that other information that I talked about, this also gives you a way to see, are we suspending children? And if we are suspending, are we doing it disproportionately? So that is another added benefit of using the BIR system. Speaking of disproportionality, we have equity profile alerts. So I talked about the metrics and I threw out composition, risk ratios. But thankfully, that's not something that you need to calculate on your own. And so to see if there is an issue of disproportionality. So in the BIR system, when I talk about the system, I'm specifically talking about the spreadsheet. These alerts are built into the system. And so you don't have to manually calculate them. You don't have to go enter them into another spreadsheet or anything else. It's in the spreadsheet. As long as you enter your data, then if there are any possible disproportionality issues, any equity issues, then you will get an alert. And so the alerts are around frequency of incidents. So are you writing more BIRs for one group than another? So in that other table, I had showed you that we're looking at gender, at race, ethnicity, dual language learner status, and IEP status. So we're looking at frequency of alerts. Is the program, and this is at the program level. So at the program level, are more BIRs being reported for certain groups. And then we're also looking at suspension. So as far as in-school and out-of-school suspension, are we over identifying certain groups that where the BIR is resulting, the report is resulting in a suspension? And so these are the types of alerts that you're gonna see. And so if you see one, then that takes you to another part of the spreadsheet that allows you to see what the issue might be. So sample of BIR charts, because now you're probably, well, what does this all look like? I'm talking about a lot of things, right? And so if you haven't seen them before, because I know that on these BIR webinars, we kind of have a mix. We have those of you who have been using it for a long time, and this is all repetitious to you. And there's others who are just starting to use it or who want to use it. So sample BIR charts. So you do get a program summary. So the program summary tells you how many BIRs do we have in our program, how many have been reported, how many children to date with BIRs, and then we also look at the average number of BIRs per child with BIRs. Because it's really important, because as Denise said, children will have challenging behavior. And so what you'll see, you know, we're not really looking for any specific trend here, but it does give you information on how many BIRs per month, how many children with BIRs. We also see the percent of BIRs to date by problem behavior. If you were a past user, I do want to draw your attention that now I added a few decimal places, yay. And the reason I did that, and that's important, is because sometimes when you would look at these, you would have the percentage, it would be like 39% and 39%. And then, you know, you wouldn't really be able to distinguish unless you went to the other tab in the spreadsheet. And so now I've kind of broken it down a little bit more, because sometimes the difference in a percent is 1 or 2 children. So if you've used it before, then there's a new update that will be available later on this month. Percent by activities, BIRs to date by activities. So where are the behaviors occurring? And so it's all in kind of in order, so you can quickly see, you know, where are behaviors occurring at the program level. They're occurring at centers, in circle, during transition. And then who's involved? So who's involved in these behavior incidents? It's the peers, it's the teachers, the assistant teacher. The possible motivation, so how, so we have here, you know, avoiding the task, obtain desired items. So how is the teacher identifying what the motivation is? It kind of helps us to see what the teacher perceives that motivation. And then the response, how is the teacher responding? So is he or she responding more specifically, more using very, the same response always? Are they using a variety of things? Here you might see some of those suspension events. We don't code them as suspensions or dismissals. They're coded as other things. And so you're able to see that. And then we also have a histogram about the number of children with BIR. So in our program, you know, what does that look like? Think of this as like that bell-shaped curve, where, you know, you would expect everyone to kind of sit in that middle, 1 to 5. And then do we have children with 20 or more BIRs? And so you have this data as well. And so this data is available at the program level, but it's also available at the classroom and child level. So you're able to see by classroom, how many incidents per month, what's the problem behaviors that are occurring. So for example, when you go into that tab, you're able to see, go ahead and filter to a specific classroom and then see the children who are in that classroom and how many incidents for each one of those children. And you're able to see the summary for that teacher. So using the Excel doesn't require any advanced or intermediate level Excel skills. When you look at it, it may seem like you might need those skills, but in reality, you don't. It's just data entry and then clicking on some filters. We do have data tutorials to kind of guide you so that you feel more comfortable using them. We also have a child summary. So the child summary provides that same kind of information. So if you want to look at a specific child and see where are the incidents occurring and how does that look like, there is a tab that gives you all of this information as well. It gives you kind of monthly what's occurring, what are the problem behaviors, and then it also gives you some demographic about that child. So demographic information. So that is kind of what that provides. And again, if you've used the BIR already, this screen might look a little bit different to you, but it still has that same functionality as it did before. And so the overview handout, this is a new resource that we have that kind of goes over the BIR and what it is and how you might use this data and why you might want to. And so if you are interested in using the BIR and you want to provide have more information for yourself or to provide that for someone else, then the overview handout is available on the website that you can share with others in your program. Okay.
So how many people are so excited right now? The BIR can do some amazing things for our programs, and we really want to encourage our programs to use this kind of data that is built for early childhood educators. It's not something that was built for kindergarten or for second grade that we have to tweak and mess around with and make up our own fields to make it work for us. This system is built specifically for early childhood educators, and it's really exciting because we've never had our own tools before. So what we want to really, because we know lots of people get excited when they see the data and they see these great charts that you can produce, and it's so easy, and it's just a data entry, just a little click of a number here and there, and you get these beautiful charts. And we do want people to use them, but we need to make sure that our programs understand the why or the purpose behind using tools such as the BIR in order to make those decisions that are going to make some long-term, some durable changes for our kids. So what we want to talk about now is really understanding the why of BIR and how it relates to program-wide pyramid model implementation. So hopefully all of you understand program-wide pyramid model. There are 7 critical elements that we feel like in order to build that strong foundation of learning, that we need to have all of these elements in place. We have to have a strong leadership team at the program. We have to have an understanding from all of our staff members why we're making these changes, why we feel it's important. So we are always working on staff buy-in. We have to make sure our families understand what we are teaching, and hopefully they will follow along at home and in the community. We look at professional development for our staff through practice-based coaching. And we do a lot of work around supporting teachers and supporting staff through coaching. We will do some work around the top tier of kids, because we know young kids will always engage in challenging behaviors. So how can we as the adults in the program be ready and be providing interventions that are individualized for those children, and how can we be ready and prepared and be consistent in the way we deliver those interventions. And then lastly, and what we're really going to be talking about in this webinar series, is making sure that we have data at our program that is specific to our children, our staff, our families, so that we can make decisions, consistent decisions, that we can look at our data on a regular basis. We don't have to wait for our district office or the kindergarten staff to share the data with us. We have local control of that data. We can look at it anytime we want to. We know that the data that is being inputted is valid. It is a true representation of what's happening in our program for our children. So thinking about this sequence and this cycle of program-wide implementation. We have developed several data tools that we feel like help you determine if, when, and if you have all of those critical elements in place. So at the program level, we use a tool called Benchmarks of Quality. The Benchmarks of Quality helps a program-wide leadership team understand what critical elements are in place and what critical elements we need to build action plans around and work towards implementation fidelity. At a classroom level, we have tools, the Teaching Pyramid Observation Tool, or TPOT, for preschool classrooms, or the Teaching Pyramid Infant Toddler Observation Scale, or Tippy Toes, which we use for birth to 2 classrooms. Both of those scales are observations that a coach, a program coach, would do to be able to understand what parts of the pyramid model teachers are implementing in the classroom. So now we know at a program level how we're doing with implementation. We know at a classroom level how we're doing with implementation. And next is the child level. So the BIR is really going to help us understand individual children's level of social emotional implementation. And so just so we can see that whole sequence flow. So the benchmarks of quality leads us to thinking about BIR when you look at benchmarks 28 through 34. This helps your leadership team examine how, as a program, we respond when children have challenging behaviors, how we talk to families about those behaviors, how staff are trained and poised to be able to respond in a preventative way. And so when your leadership team is scoring the benchmarks of quality, items 28 through 34, if we are thinking about BIR, or if we have implemented BIR, it's going to help your benchmarks become that much clearer. Along the same lines, the TPOT, or Teaching Pyramid Observation Tool, remember I said that's our measure to look at preschool classrooms and how individual classrooms are implementing pyramid model. So when we go to item 32 on the TPOT, it has us looking at how the adults in the classroom are responding to challenging behavior. And so if I'm a coach, if I'm a classroom or a practitioner coach, and I'm scoring a TPOT, and I have lots of items in item 32, I have lots of incidents of behavior. This is a place that's going to lead me to start thinking, okay, maybe we need to move to a BIR for this kid. So you see how the data tools are very specific for your program, but is going to help give you that big picture of implementation, and they build off one another so that we can get that comprehensive look of how our program is implementing the model. So we all understand that data is really important. Collecting data is just our first step. We really need to make sure that the data is used to inform decision making. And I think that's kind of a new concept for early childhood programs. Not the collection part, because we're really good at collecting data. We'll collect anything that you want. You want a class, you want an Eckers, you want a Dibbles, you want whatever you want, we can collect it. But it's the next level that we want to get programs to is really examining that data, making sure they're making decisions based on what their specific data is telling them, and then hopefully producing those meaningful outcomes for kids, for families, and for our staff. And always remembering, whatever data tools that you choose, that your goal in collecting and examining that data has to be prevention and promotion of social skills and emotional skills, and supporting teachers in the way they teach those social emotional skills. and supporting teachers in how they respond when challenging behavior does occur. So that has to be the goal of any data tool that we use, and it's definitely the focus of the BIR. So in order to make sure that we are using the BIR to its fullest extent, we have to make sure first and foremost that your program-wide leadership team is all in, meaning that they get the why. They understand the purpose of the tool. They know what kinds of decisions they can make based off the tool. They embed the use of data throughout the program and in policies and procedures throughout the program, not only when thinking about individual children, but as they think about how supporting staff or how to support families across their program. They definitely see the need to use data when addressing challenging behavior across the program. And like we said, collecting the data is an amazing first step. And we're happy to support programs that just want to collect the data. But that's really not going to get us to those long-term outcomes, just getting the numbers in. We need to really assist our leadership team in being able to analyze the data, being able to ask questions from the data, and being able to interpret what the data is telling them so that they can make good decisions. And then also, in order to get that teacher buy-in, they need to know that what those new forms that they're completing is causing or affecting change. So we have to make a plan to share data regularly with our staff, with our teachers, and with our families. Our families need to know, in order for them to be completely engaged and collaborate with us, they need to understand the data decisions that we're making across campus. So data is a very valuable tool, we feel, and it will help you be able to start understanding where challenges are happening. So is it certain activities? Is it certain classrooms? We can pinpoint the most serious types of behaviors that are happening across the program. We may be able to start thinking about the motivation, why this behavior is happening for a certain child. Is it a certain consequence that's being delivered? Is there a purpose or a function that needs to be addressed? If we can understand those factors and really get a good handle on that, so we think, oh my gosh, behavior is happening all across the day. It happens everywhere. It's out of control. But when we look at the BIR, it's really not across the day. It's really happening at center time or child-directed activities. So instead of doing massive amounts of training about behavior in teacher-directed or circle time routines, we have a 45-minute booster session on how to structure center time or unstructured or child-directed activities, and we can really make some good changes across our program. If we see that we're having lots of incidences of physical aggression, then we may have to look at our program-wide expectations. Are we teaching a skill for being respectful, or are we teaching friendship skills? Are we helping kids understand what it means to be a friend, what it means to be kind? We may need to adjust and reteach some program-wide expectations if we see behaviors like that happening. So the value is huge in terms of professional development. We've just made our intervention so concise and so specific to our needs based on this simple data tool. So with BIR, we get to analyze at different levels, like Myrna explained briefly, and we're going to go into that deeper. But we get to look at it at a universal or a program-wide level. So is this an issue that's happening across the program, across the day? Or is it just maybe 1 or 2 classrooms or 3 or 4 kids? So we get to target our interventions based on the need. We can look at solving problems for specific classrooms. Is it just a teacher training? Is it a resource that they need? Or is there a child that needs more specific support? So it will help us guide our decision making if we use it in the right way and if we use it consistently. And that's the purpose for this webinar, is to really make sure that we've got a handle on the data that we are looking at. And so a lot of times we'll think that, okay, so now I have all this BIR data. I know that this kid is having lots of challenging issues. Where's my behavior intervention plan? So we don't want you to think that BIR is going to replace your functional behavior assessment, because it's not going to really lead us to prevention strategies. But what it will do is give us that step 2, that gathering of information. That's part of your FBA. It really does all that for you. So it's going to define the target behavior. You're going to know exactly what's happening with that child. It's going to tell you exactly what activities or the times the behavior is most likely to happen. It's going to let you know that, no, you don't need to observe all across the day, but if you come in and observe him at center time, this is when we're going to get the most bang for your buck. So kind of like we used to do old school scatter plots or ABC cards, the BIR is serving that purpose for us. So it will help us look at function, and it's going to give us lots of information about the responses or the consequences that the teacher has already tried or is trying. So it gives us all that information we need to start building our behavior intervention, but it's not going to be the be all end all. Hopefully that makes sense. So understanding that programs need to understand, they need to get the why. If they don't have the why, then it just is going to feel like one more thing that we're asking our teachers to do. And we don't want it to be that, because we want to be able to make these really good, these really durable decisions from our data. So we need to make sure that your program is ready for BIR before you ask teachers to start filling out the form. So we've come up with a new tool for you to use, and it's the BIR Readiness Checklist. And this is also available on the NCPMI website as of last week, I think, Myrna. Mm-hmm. So it's a 3-part checklist. It starts off with just an explanation and directions of how to use the checklist. The second part wants the leadership team to sit down and kind of go through and see, are we ready? Are there things that we need to do before we can think about starting to collect BIR? So it can be used for programs that are just thinking about BIR. It can be used with programs that have used older versions of the BIR and just need a refresh. And it can be used with programs that are just thinking they maybe use the BIR, but need to really tweak or revamp the way that they make decisions or analyze the data that they're getting from BIR. So we would encourage you at any level of implementation with BIR that you need to go back and review the checklist with your leadership team. We hope that the whole leadership team, your whole program-wide team, will sit around the table and look at the checklist together. We think it's going to be really beneficial for getting that buy-in or rejuicing, re-energizing programs that maybe have kind of hit a wall on their data entry and their data they're analyzing data. So once the team comes together and reviews all the indicators on the checklist, then we want them to work with a coach or work as a team to develop action plans to make sure if they checked any no's on the checklist that they have a plan to rectify that or to get it to a yes, whatever it may be. If they didn't have a regular scheduled agenda item to look at data, or they really haven't done a staff buy-in or a staff pitch around why the BIR is important, that they take those no's and they make a plan, a structured plan to get it to a yes, whatever it may be. Then once all those checklist items are checked yes, and we've then you're ready to get started with BIR. So the checklist looks like this. Again, you can download it off NCPMI whenever you are ready. But there's a couple of categories that it wants you to look through. And first, like we said, is a leadership team. We really, in order to make this work, to get those good outcomes that we want to get, we have to have a high functioning leadership team. So if you're going through this checklist and any of these items are no, then we want you to start there. Start planning around having regular meetings at your leadership team. Start thinking about how we can re-engage our administrator to support the change effort. Making sure that all these leadership team items are yes before you think about starting to collect BIR data. The second part really talks about the resources that you need in order to be effective with your data entry. So it talks about the computer software that you'll need. It talks about, do you have a staff person identified? We really want you to name a person and write that person's name on the checklist. Who's going to enter the data? And do they have time in their schedule for weekly entry? Do they have time? Have they been allocated time to do the training and the preparation that's needed to do data entry? And so if you go to the NCPMI website, this is the front page, and you're ready to download the BIR package, you go to the implementation site on the toolbar, go down on implementation, and then down on the implementation, there's the data-based decision-making line. You're going to click implementation, database decision-making, and then this page will open automatically, and you'll see the accordion files with all the data tools that we've talked about. Did you want to talk do a little bit about this, Myrna, so you can tell them where to go?
Sure. So so it is on challengingbehavior.org. You, from that implementation menu, you do you can go directly to the BIR page, or you can go to this page that gives you all of the tools that Denise has gone through and more. And to get to those, you just click on that down arrow, and then it shows you the resources for that specific tool. So each tool will have, it'll have an Excel spreadsheet, it'll have the form that you'll be using to collect that data, and then it'll have a look, think, act, which is the way that we think about looking at your data, and then any other additional resources. The BIR specifically, when you get to that page, it's going to take you to another page that specifically only has BIR resources. So you will be able to download the overview, the overview handout that I talked about in the beginning. And you will be able to download the readiness checklist that Denise just talked about. If you want the spreadsheet, the form, and the resources that I'm showing here, the training and the database decision-making guide that accompany the BIR, you will have to fill out a form that asks you for some of your information, your name, your email, your program name, city and state, and then what your role is. This is only for me. We're not selling it to anyone. I just need it so that if I have an update to the system, if something that I need to push out, I can send everyone who's downloaded the system an email, letting them know that we have a new system, or that there's been an update, or that there's something that was fixed. So that's the only reason we ask for your email. The only other reason is that I do send out a survey once a year, just asking how you're using the system, what kinds of things you'd like to see. So those are the only ways that we use your information. So as far as downloading it, what you get is that overview fact sheet. There is a teacher fact sheet that talks about why are we using the BIR. And so that's a really good fact sheet to help teachers to understand what the BIR is and how the program is using it. You get the Excel, the spreadsheet. And so the spreadsheet, once you download the spreadsheet, it's yours. You save it onto any kind of cloud-based software or onto your desktop or a thumb drive, and it's yours from there. So no one has access to your data, only you and anyone else who you choose to share that with. But NCPMI, we don't have any access to your data. You get the BIR form, so it is a PDF form, which you can then go and make copies of and decide how to distribute to your teachers. You get a form that has instructions on, it has a training link for teachers and staff on when to complete a BIR and how to complete it. And it also has definitions for each one of those, everything that's on the form. So this is not, everything is defined, operationally defined in this document. The one that has the link on it, the behavior incident report instructions, everything is operationally defined. And then you have the data decision-making guide. And so this is, if you're familiar with the Look, Think, Act, this is basically the version for BIR. And it guides you through looking at your data, because you're gonna get so many charts, so many tables that you're kind of, if you love data, you're gonna be in love, because you're gonna kind of have everything, bar charts, pie charts, tables, percentages, numbers, and you're gonna be able to manipulate the data however you find useful. But the data decision-making guide, if you don't feel as comfortable, will kind of take you through all of the steps of looking at your data so that you can arrive to database decisions. And then
the guide will also help, which a big thing for me, because I'm not a data person, is helping you kind of prioritize what graphs are most important to start with, and then how do you dig from that kind of surface level graph, and then how do you get lower and lower to answer deeper questions. So I think if you're not a data person, the guide will be really useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the guide also goes into the equity profiles, so that it also takes you step by step. If you do have an equity alert, what do you do with that? And so it takes you step by step in going from the spreadsheet, clicking on it, and step by step, what do you do then? And you also get the data entry guide. So this is really important for whoever's going to be entering your data, because this gives them the step-by-step of what they need to do to get started using the spreadsheet, and then troubleshooting any issues that they might have as they use it. There is on the spreadsheet itself, in the very first tab, there is a YouTube link that I go through the entire spreadsheet, and I go tab by tab. I talk about how you use the features within the workbook, and then any tips that I might think of at the moment. And all of this is free, because I get asked that question a lot of times. It is free. There is no cost to download and to use it. So that's pretty exciting too.
Very exciting.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk just a little bit about resources. So we've been building on our resources for the BIR and trying to see what are the kinds of things that people need and want and that can help them. And so we started the webinar series because we identified that that was kind of a hole, that we had this BIR system, but that a lot of people had a lot of questions. So right now, like we said in the beginning, this is the second webinar. The first one was an introduction to the BIR. So that's a really great place to start as far as understanding why the BIR was developed and what it is, and getting that overview of each of the spreadsheet itself. We also have an archived coaching webinar. And this coaching webinar is about using the BIR to support practitioners around children who engage in challenging behavior. This one's a really good one because not only does it give you that, it gives you the information about what the BIR is, but it goes into a case study around a specific classroom and a child. And so it shows you that breakdown of, okay, now I've collected this data. Now, how does it look like when I start to unpack it? So this is a really good webinar to get to as well, when you can access it using that link, or you just go into our webpage, into the recorded webinars, and where you'll see all of the webinars that we've done the past 2 years, something like that. But this one is a good one that accompanies kind of this whole BIR series.
And if for some reason you miss, because we're going to have 5 webinars in this BIR series. So if you missed one or you missed 3, you can always go back to the website, and they're archived on there for you.
Yes. Yeah, and we do kind of encourage anyone who's using the system, when you think about training your staff, that these webinars might be something that you can go to and use as a resource as well. The BIR fact sheet, we talked about that in the beginning, kind of gives you that overview of what the BIR is, what is the system and how it's used, and why you might want to use it. And again, this was developed because a lot of people said, well, now I want to take this back. What can I take back to my administrator? And so we think this is a good handout that you can start with.
We thought maybe it would be if you're a program coach and you wanted to pitch to a program and you feel like they're ready, but they don't know anything about BIR, this would be a good one-pager to kind of not take up a lot of time, not give a lot of detail, but just really give them the surface level of what it can do for them.
And this one you can download without needing to download the entire system. So if you go into that BIR page or that accordion on the web page, you should be able to just download this without having to give us your name and all of that. Another handout we have is what every teacher wants to know about the BIR. And so as Denise said, you know, you as a teacher, you collect lots of data already. We're asking one more piece of data. And so, of course, the question is going to be, why do I have to collect this? What is this going to do? And so the handout really goes through what a teacher might ask. You know, what is this? I'm just here to teach. Why am I doing this? And how do I know what I'm recording on this form? And, you know, what are you asking me really to do? And it really goes through all of that in a really easy way. It's, you know, I find it very useful as a resource for teachers to be able to really see, like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. And this, I think, along with the sharing of data, so when they do start to collect data, that they can put those pieces together and see how this is a system. It's not just a one-way collecting the data and then who knows where it goes.
Yeah,
so.
We're used to that. We've got that down. But we as early childhood educators, we never have in the past gotten to see the data and make decisions about our classroom, about our teaching practices because of data. And when we get to do that, it's really exciting, and teachers will buy into that change pretty easily, but we have to set it up for them. We have to let them know. And I think this little one pager does a really good job of being, or I think it's 2 pages, being able to set that up for them. And I have a lot of teacher friends, and every time you say the word data, they're like, ugh, their eyes roll back into their head because they collect data on everything, but when they actually get to see it used for change, it's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Then, as we said, this is a webinar series. So the next webinar is going to be in September. We don't have a date yet, but it will be about addressing implementation challenges. Because again, with any data system, there's always going to be challenges until you kind of get that stride. So we've heard a lot about what the challenges are. And so this is what we'll talk about in this next webinar is, you know, from data entry to using the spreadsheet to teacher buy-in to leadership team buy, all of these things. We'll talk about everything, you know, as far as any challenges that programs are having. We will release an updated BIR version that should be released by August 1st. I will make sure that if you are a past user that you know about it. So I have your email so I can let you know that we have a new version. If you are content with the version you're using, that's totally fine. There haven't been any changes to any of the formulas or anything like that. It's more formatting changes and adding a couple of features that I know that previous users wanted to see to make things a little bit easier. So I will, you know, everyone will kind of know that this is out and ready to be used. I don't know if we can look at questions. Let's see.
While Myrna's looking at questions, I just wanted to summarize. So hopefully we're building a foundation of really understanding why database decision-making is so important to your implementation fidelity. And really, if you're implementing any initiative, but specifically pyramid model with any kind of integrity, these are the building blocks that you want to be working towards in your program. So hopefully this has kind of laid out that database decision-making sequence for you with pyramid model, and that you're interested, and you'll join us again in September so we can keep building on that foundation.
So we have some quick questions that I can answer. How many children can be entered into the system? The system is set up for up to 175 children with BIRs. You don't enter every child into the system. You only enter children as as a BIR is written. So 175 should be more than enough. It does take, the new version can take up to 5,000 BIRs and 50 classrooms. And so that is that. The BIR first training, that is on the website as a recorded webinar on challengingbehavior.org. You can look at the archived webinars, and that is there. And Denise, someone asked about what is the recommendation for family childcare programs?
Yeah, we have family childcare programs that are using BIR, and so maybe their leadership team is just their program coach and the owner. So there's two people on their leadership team, and that's okay. We just we work through the different critical elements the same way we would do with a big team. No difference. And you can use BIR. Of course, your BIR is going to be a lot smaller, and you're never going to need 175 entries, because remember what Myrna said, we only enter kids as BIRs are written. So you won't enter every kid that's enrolled in your program, only the kids that get BIRs. But yeah, we do family childcare all the time.
Okay. And as far as assigning IDs, we do recommend that you assign IDs to children and classrooms, that you don't use names. I'm going to record a short YouTube videos on how you might think of assigning IDs. And I think that might be useful. So we'll come out with that sometime this month, because we do recommend that you use IDs. Let's see. Okay, the spreadsheet for use on Google Drive. You can put the spreadsheet, save it in your Google Drive, but you can't convert it into a Google Sheet. And so you'll see that I put that in the data entry guide and in the tutorial. Don't convert it into a Google Sheet because it won't work. Yeah, it looks like it's working, but I promise you it's not. You can save it in Google Drive and access it that way, but you can't convert it into a Google Sheet. And so there's lots of questions about, Denise, about using it in distance learning. And so I don't have the answers for that right now, and I'm not sure if we know how it will be.
Yeah, I think we're just kind of learning as we go on that. And in different states, their schools are going back in different modes. So it's really, we're just going to kind of figure it out as we go. And hopefully you'll partner with us, and we'll get some information from you.
Okay. So I think we are right about done with our time.
Yeah, we did good.
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank you so much to our panelists for their wonderful insights. And your feedback is very important to the work that we do. Please remember to provide your feedback on this webinar with our post-webinar survey by typing the web address shown on this slide into your internet browser. Your certificate of attendance will appear once you submit the survey. We invite you to visit our website, challengingbehavior.org, to sign up for our upcoming webinars, access recordings, download pyramid model resources, and more. Thank you to our funder for making this webinar possible. This concludes our webinar. Thank you all, and have a good rest of your day.